Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 2 and today we are going to present our material regarding to language and culture. Please to the next slide. And here are the names for our group. Atika Fifa, and then we have Balki Syedina Islami. We also have Wildina Yusfa, Fadila, Utami Oktaviani, and finally myself, Muhammad Surya Saputra. Next. Okay, for today's discussion, we have a few points to talk about. What is language? What is culture? Is there any relationship between them? Today's topics will answer some of your questions about language and culture. And a few important points that we are going to talk about will be about the definition of language and culture. And we also have a relation between language and culture, how language reflects culture. We also have linguistic relativity, influence of language and culture, and finally, okay, the first material will be brought to you by Miss Tika. Time is yours.
Thank you for the chance. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Atika Afifa, and I will give you a little bit explanation about definition of language and culture. The first is language. Language is a system of communication or arbitrary vocal sounds by means of which human beings are used to communicate and interact with each other in their life. According to Saussure, language is an arbitrary system of signs constituted of the signifier and signified. In other words, language is first a system based on no logic or reason. Secondly, the system covers both objects and expression used for objects. And thirdly, objects and expression are arbitrarily linked. And finally, expression include sounds and graphemes used by humans for generating speech and writing respectively for purpose of communication. And the second is culture. Word culture comes from the Latin word cultura, related to cult or worship. In its broadest sense, the terms refers to the result of human interaction. Uh, Culture has been defined in some ways, but most simply as the learned and shared behavior of a community of interacting human beings. According to G. Hofstede, culture is the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the members of one category of people from another. I think that's all from me about definition. So let's move to the next speakers.
Okay, so the next material will be brought to you by Miss Balkis. Please.
Yep, thank you for the time. So I'm going to continue Atika explanation. So she has already explained about the definition of language and culture. And here I'm going to continue the brief explanation about relationship between language and culture. As you guys can see on the slide, of course, there are relationship between language and culture. Language and culture are intertwined. A particular language usually points out of a specific group of people. When you interact with another language, it means that you are also interacting with the culture that speaks the language. So as the slide shows that there are three main points of relationship between language and culture. So they are using parallel, homologous relationship of culture and language, and influencing the way people think. So this short explanation about using parallel says that complex is one term that you can use to describe human communication, since parallel is used to transmit messages. And the second one is homologous relationship of culture and language. So it says that the phrase language is culture and culture is language is often mentioned when language and culture are discussed. And the last one is influencing the way people think. So, if you're familiar with the principle of linguistic relativity, it states that the way people think of the world is influenced directly by the language that the people use to discuss it. So I think that's all. A brief explanation about relationship between language and culture. We move to the next slide. Thank you.
So, uh, the next material will be brought to you by Miss Weldina. Please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time that is given to me. My name is Weldina Yuspa, and let's talk about how language reflects culture. Every society has a language, and even in a large societies which have one language, there are often different variation across the geographical divide. Societies often represent an amalgamation of different cultures, and these different cultures are best reflected in a different language that are used. In light of the current multicultural society, it is common to have many different nationalities represented in one nation. As Gladwell 236 explains, these societies have histories and cultures that form them. Now we can conclude that some languages have word for things that others do not. And most languages divided up and name the world differently from one another. Let's take the example of how different cultures name body parts. For example, Russian has a single word, ruka, for a part of the body that English divides into two words, hand and arm. Suggests that the speaker of Russian and English attach different degrees of importance to naming these body parts. Thank you. That's all from me.
And this material will be brought by myself. It is about linguistic relativity. There are two theories in this linguistic relativity. The first one will be about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is that the grammatical structure of a person's language influences the way he or she perceives the world. The hypothesis has been largely abandoned by linguistics, as it has found its limited experimental support. Hence, studies have not shown that speakers of language lacking a subjunctive mood such as Chinese experience difficulty with hypothetical problems. The weaker version of this theory have done some merit, however. For example, different words mean different things in different language. Not every word in every language has a one-to-one exact translation in a different language. Because of these small but important differences, using the wrong word within a particular language because you believe it to mean something else can have consequences. The example cases of this is in bahasa Indonesia there are the word kita, but the word kita in certain regions can have different meanings. For example, kita in Jakarta and many other cities located in Java could mean us, but the word kita in cities like and many other places that located in Celebes could also mean you, but in a polite way. Secondly, there is the cognitive behavioral therapy. According to the cognitive therapy, the way a person thinks has a huge impact on what she or he says and does. Founded by Aaron T. Beck, this school of thought discusses the interplay among emotion, behavior, language, and thought. Since internal dialogue is a form of language, the way we speak to ourselves can influence our daily lives. Problems with our internal dialogue known as cognitive distortions, can lead to negative behaviors or serious emotional problems. The next material will be brought to you by Ms. Fadila. Please, time is yours.
Okay, I'm Fadila and I will explain you about the influence on culture. There are several points in it. How does language influence culture? Language is the culture that is formed within its constituents as a society, such as how certain words are used in support of the culture. It's through language that members of specific culture communicate with each other and create bonds with others. For example, if your language forces you to think only in certain ways, then there is no way you can test whether it is determining your perception. That is how big the impact of language to culture, also the people. The second one is a language and cultural words. The influence of culture on language is seen through instances a region that defines its culture. A prime example can be found in the United States with the use of words that mean you all. Each variation of this phrase like that really identifies the region. For example, in South, they will say y'all, y'all. In Appalachian, they will say yuns or you ones. And in Pennsylvania, they say for you ones. And the North says you guys, which is the simplest form that is inclusive. The third one is language reveal about culture. Language and culture are dependent upon each other. When events and experiences occur within a culture, language is used to express them. For example, to an outsider, the words that evolve from culture have no meaning, but to the insiders, words resonate in an oral tradition, like storytelling. This example the necessity of having an understanding of a culture, not just its language. Thank you.
And then the next material will be brought to you by Miss Tami. Please, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the change that you given to me. So I'm Utami Oktaviani. I will explain about language, culture, and thoughts. So language, in general, can be interpreted as symbol of human vocal system that used as a tool for thinking, forming with our mind, and to understand the mind of other person. From this definition, we can know the clear connection between language and mind. Language cannot be separated from thought. So the first one, I will explain about language. So language is media and result of human mind that is used to communicate, either like through written, oral speech, or body movement, or sign language. So the second is thought. Mind or thoughts is a mental tool of thinking. The mind process is the brain's response of what has happened today, the present, and the future. So the last is culture. So culture is the things that relate to the mind and human reason. Culture is the result of creativity and thinking of each member in language community. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, as a conclusion, language and culture have existed since society was first established. These two things can't be separated and will always growing along with human life. And I believe that's all from us. Please to the next slide. And thank you for participating. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.